I'm Deidre Jordan, and welcome to today's episode of Vader Down. Today we are meeting with the Chief Operating Officer, Katie Ingram, from Pinnacle Dermatology. Katie and I both worked at DaVita actually at some point during our careers, but didn't meet up and get to know each other until we worked at Envision Healthcare. During that time, I got to know her and see her lead the Integration Management Office. So looking forward to catching up with Katie today and letting the viewers get to know her further and her journey. So welcome, Katie. How are you doing?
Great, Deidre. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So let's just start with letting the viewers get to know you a little bit more and tell us about your climb to your current position.
Great. So we have 2 hours. No, really, when you, well, old Deidre, it's been a long journey. So I think when you kind of find those markers. So I started in the military. I was I kind of joined in my freshman year of college. So my pathway to leadership really started there. It took 8 years in the military, both active and reserve. A number of different experiences, primarily in the medical corps, as well as spent some time in the public affairs officer role during Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and then ended with what was my passion, which is burn and trauma nursing at the Institute of Surgical Research in San Antonio. I then left the military, started my civilian leadership career in the senior living industry, leading kind of large assisted living, independent living communities in the Texas market, and then advancing into a regional role in the Mid-Atlantic market. After that journey, I went into complex care management, really, kind of seeing the other side of, some of the community-based healthcare needs, building relationships for an organization called Senior Bridge in the Baltimore market. And kind of parallel to that, I got my master's in nursing. Since I'd had a lot of sort of portfolio and business experience, I really wanted to bring up my clinical credibility inside of my circles that I was really networking. So I actually focused on a clinical master's, and I did a master's in nursing. I also had visions of like giving up the BlackBerry at the time, tells you how old I am, giving up the Palm Pilot and the BlackBerry and really maybe possibly going back into clinical practice. But was, towards the end of my master's, I met some leaders from DaVita, and they really encouraged me to take a look at this organization and where they were heading in that market, and had the opportunity to, join DaVita with some fantastic leaders, and Javier Rodriguez, who's now the CEO of DaVita. At the time, he was a kind of president, vice president of a market. So kind of grew up in that area with some just great leaders. Ended up spending 5 years at DaVita, following a fellow DaVita in to Sheridan, now Envision Healthcare, starting the integration management office there as they were going through these rapid growth cycles through M&A and organic onboarding. That transitioned into also not only having the integration management office, but also leading transformation and having this operational PMO, so project management office that focused on key organizational projects that were were helping the organization meet their strategic goals. And also we integrated the Lean Kaizen office at a certain time, so that it was really this full life cycle of change management for the organization. And how I got here now is, as we know, Envision kind of grew. I had some opportunities to join into the private equity market, and wanted just to take my hand at being on inside of the fast pace of private equity. And I've done this is my second role in a COO role in private equity backed healthcare organizations. And I just started at Pinnacle Dermatology, which is a multi-state medical and cosmetic dermatology organization based in Brentwood, Tennessee.
Great. Looking back on that journey, were there any key pivotal moments that really helped shape kind of landing where you are today, or any key takeaways that you can share after reflecting on kind of your career so far?
it's finding those good mentors in your pathway. And I said, once I think got to a point in my career, it was really understanding the importance of network and mentorship, and helping, and those mentors helping me really refine what it is I love to do and like to do, versus, saying, yeah, I know we all have a talent, we can, do a lot of things, but knowing knowing where not only am I good at through assessment tests and investing in myself to, really know myself, and then also getting feedback from key mentors on here's where, we see your strengths, and then getting the feedback on here's where I think, your blind spots are, and you can continue to grow in those areas, and really focusing on my growth in certain areas.
Did you have someone earlier in your career that gave you an opportunity for a role that maybe you didn't have much experience in at the time, and really kind of took with you in that role?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I would tell this story. I've told this story kind of throughout my career as I've grown, because they're always like, well, how did you transition from your military career to your civilian career? And it was absolutely so. Jamie was the regional director for the senior living organization. I had applied for the community relations position because I was like, I just kind of want to get out and, get back into the civilian market. And I figured I could sell assisted living. And halfway through the interview, I'm saying, this does not sound like a community relations position. And they're like, no, we have a vacancy for the administrator role. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And with an administrator, what do they do? And they should have kept using this word like P&L. And I'm like, I was coming out of the military, we had budgets, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'll fake it till I make it. And she gave me this opportunity. And, I was 25 years old, and it's a $13 million, operation. And I remember like, are you sure? She's like, I'm pretty sure you can handle this. I'm like, okay. So, she really, she took that leap of faith with me, knowing that, I'd come out of the military, I had some really strong, people, the people process results kind of algorithm, kind of hardwired. And she's like, I think you can do this. I'm pretty confident you can. I'm like, okay. And, so I think that was really that opportunity, that person who gave me that chance and allowed me to really roll up my sleeves and get into operations. And I remember asking the next day, like, what does P&L stand for? You use this, or because I think it was pre-Google. It was early 2000s. It's like I couldn't tell if it was P and L or PNL. I'm like, I don't know. But so thankfully now people trust me with those financials. But it was I got it once I understood what they were talking about, but it was like the jargon. I was like, I had no idea what she was talking about. So that would be my entry into civilian leadership.
That's a good story. Thanks for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about women in the workplace. So, there's the phrase, the good old boy network, and really just, kind of men helping men in the workplace, but maybe not as much with, men empowering women or having a seat at the table. Can you share an example of maybe where you have witnessed this in the workplace and your experience with it?
A lot of people will say, oh, I'm sure you felt that in the military. And I'll actually tell you I didn't. Whether I was lucky or it was just the, maybe it's the medical corps. So I was in, kind of running with a different circle, but I definitely didn't feel that in my military career, 8 years. And I think I was always either advocating for myself appropriately or just demonstrating competence. So I was able to, have that leadership role, even sans rank in the military. I'd say I felt it more in the civilian world. It probably wasn't until I was starting to say, oh, I'm going to take a maternity leave, or oh, I'm going to do these things. And, it was then perceived unfairly, or initially like, oh, you're getting time off, and, that you weren't necessarily owed it, and why aren't you coming back? So I think that's where I probably felt it most was, that there wasn't like, oh, we're going to take 2 weeks off and so should you, or we only took 1 week off with our kid and so should you. I'm like, not quite the same balance. It's never like I left operations in a mess. It was always kind of buttoned up tight, had really good, team in place. And I think I felt that unfortunately, when I took some maternity leave and had to really come back and advocate strongly about, no, like everything's fine, everything was under control, and the kind of male counterparts, because I don't want to say negative, I think it's just they're unconscious of it, that how that is done, how that is executed in their world. So
now, how about your experience with women in the workplace, as far as women truly empowering other women and helping bring each other up or develop that same sort of relationship? What's your experience been? And maybe did you have women mentors through your career?
Great question, because you unfortunately see a lot of the eating your young kind of stuff, that I saw that a lot actually in the clinical nursing environment when I was first a clinical nurse. And I think it's one of the reasons that drove me away from clinical nursing was just a lot of that non-supporting, infighting that happened inside of the career, if you will. I have again been lucky that I had female mentors and leaders that I could go to, and my first RDO, regional director with SunWest Management, those women they completely supported each other. They were a good demonstration of how you continue to invest in the future leaders. And I think that's really what's carried me through is, my passion is for creating other leaders and, inspiring women in my organization to just continue to push themselves into, space and challenges that they may not otherwise have thought possible, and to see success on their own. But I have been fortunate to see both like the infighting and also the sometimes not so fantastic interactions between women in the workplace. But I try to keep myself away from it and differentiate myself by having really transparent conversations that I think shock people sometimes. And I'm like, well, what's your succession plan? Where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? And what can we do to build, again, your blind spots or your gaps in experience, so that when you're at the table, you're an equal competitor or athlete to the game.
Yeah, that's great. I agree. I've seen both sides of it. And Katie, if I ask you, why do you think, there are certain women that have that mentality, like you said, of eating their young? Any idea behind the why?
I think they maybe have not seen. I think people learn by example, right? And their example may have been, you have to be this certain way in order to get ahead. You have to crawl or climb or, claw your way to the top. And I think the more we can demonstrate that that's not the best way to achieve where you want to get to, that's when we'll see the change that we want to see, and have more women supporting each other in the workplace and advocating for other women. I've thought the same question, like why do those behaviors come out in women? Because you don't see it as frequently in men. They tend to I'm going to support you, I'm going to gather you, and they very quickly get mentors. I think that may be the biggest gap is like when I talk to peers in my male cohorts, they've had mentors along the way, all the way from university all the way through, and it's always been something that's been discussed and talked about. Whereas when I reflect on my experience in sororities and going through university, it wasn't making sure you have good mentors and being linked to mentors wasn't as much as a priority as it was, I know, coming out of some of the fraternities and even some of the athletic organizations that I was a part of. So I just think that mentorship and networking isn't as strongly stressed in female, in the women in leadership and women in their careers.
So let's go back to talking about your journey. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started your career?
It's okay to take more risk. I'm pretty risk tolerant, and I'm pretty adventurous in so far as taking leaps and, relocations and all of those things, which some might not. I think I'd probably even be more comfortable being more risky and more vocal about advocating for myself and how doing that helps move you faster through the cycles. So I think if there's anything I could go back and tell my younger self, it's like, one, don't be as passive about your opinion as you probably were in my youth. And I think that comes with age as well, as just being more confident in oneself and where one sits at the table. So like, take more chances with as far as like vocalizing and providing opinion.
Okay. Sounds like you've had some great mentors along the way. What's the best advice that you've been given?
I was lucky enough that through my DaVita experience that we're assigned mentors, and one of my mentors was Javier, and I got to sit down with him on a regular basis and talk through, sort of how to grow and how to continue to rise in an organization. And I remember I was probably I think I was a mother of one at the time, and I said, well, how do you do it, Javier? I know you're commuting now from Philly to Denver. You've got the family. I knew his wife and children and everything, but I said, how do you balance it? He's like, stop right there. He's like, there's no balance. Don't take the work-life balance that people, this whole concept of it, he's like, it doesn't really exist. And if you try to operate in that framework, you're going to constantly be frustrated. So try to erase that framework from your mindset and decide, what do you want to do and where do you want to be? Is your family on board with that? Do you have the support pieces in place to get you there? And then know that some days it's going to be 80% home and 20% work. And some days it's going to be, 80, 90% work and, 0 to 10% at home. But knowing that, at the end, it all smooths, but to try to say, like, on a daily basis, these scales are going to be at this, perfect weight, that's not, don't stress yourself out with that, because that's not going to be the case. And, I sat down with him again in February of last year, and I said, this, you may not remember this conversation, but I certainly do. And I said, and look at you, look where we're now. Like, he is at the top of the organization. And, I was coming in as a new COO for an organization. It was a really great full circle, because he gave the advice, and then I was able to circle around and tell him like how much that advice impacted me, because it really helped me reset my mindset that as a mother and a working mother and someone who's very focused on her career, that I'm not adding additional stress and pressure to myself to say, like, these scales, I need work-life balance. So right. I think that's the best advice I've ever been given.
Well, thanks for sharing. Definitely, I'll take that to heart as I embark on my shortly as a mother. But I'll ask a follow-up question to that. So it sounds like, life is definitely going to be unbalanced at times, but do you think, can you have it all? And when I say have it all, meaning, be a successful career woman, achieve your goals, whatever they may be a wife, a mother, family member, friend, kind of the whole array of whatever you picture your life to be fully. Do you think you can still accomplish all of those things?
Yeah, I think again, they're individual to everyone. And I think what I think is having it all is going to be different from what you or anyone else think is having it all. For me, it's, being a good role model and generating, offspring and, and friends and family that feel loved and appreciated. And at the end of the day, that, I've made a difference both in a professional way as well as a personal way. And I don't think that those things have to be mutually exclusive in their in the endeavor. So yeah, I mean, I think making sure you're really clear with what your vision is and your personal values. Another, again, tool in the tool set I think that I was lucky to achieve with DaVita was really getting a true understanding of what my personal values and my personal vision was, so that I can stay to my my true north. I mean, all these like buzzwords and things, but really, I think doing that hard work, which does take hard work. I remember like thinking, oh, how hokey is this? Like, I'm working, but really building that foundation of knowing where, like, how I want to operate, what are my boundaries, where am I going, really has and continued to help me stay on a pathway to be the kind of, I don't say laser focused, because I'm not. I'm pretty wide with my like opportunity spectrum, but to continue to move towards where I feel is like having it all, and what are my what are my end goals? So
sounds like really getting to know yourself, have strong self-awareness of.
know thyself. Yep.
Yeah.
I say that a lot with my teams, is to really understanding who you are really helps you be that better leader. Because if you're operating in a not understanding who yourself is, you can't really expect the performance from your team, because they don't really know what your vision is and what your professional values are.
So you've been in a lot of different roles throughout your career. Which one was the most fulfilling and why?
Gosh, I mean, each are fulfilling in their own way. I think that's part of my journey, is I've been, I do seek fulfillment, and it is one of my, it's one of my values. I would say, if I want to back up to more that nursing role, I mean, when I was a burn and trauma nurse and being able to really, have that hands-on care, that was really fulfilling. But also building teams and having the teams that I've had, I find fulfillment in, now that I've left the organization, that those teams, we're still connected. We've got these lifelong connections. I've just recently onboarded a previous teammate from my teams, at DaVita, into my new team. And that's when I think I get fulfillment out of helping, again, grow other leaders. And when I'm able to bring those leaders, either into my organization or, refer them to an organization that I think is going to benefit them, that's the greatest fulfillment I have, is when I've opened doors and opportunities for other people.
So Katie, those viewers that are watching that say, I want to be a chief operating officer one day, what skills would you really tell those viewers to focus on harnessing?
Chaos coordinator. No. Being really, really good at juggling many things, being really, really good at understanding metrics and operational excellence, and how, like, where you need to very quickly get to the value drivers for an organization. Obviously coming in, I've gone in different industries now, in different sectors of healthcare, and being able to very quickly surmise, like, what are the value drivers? How do we create value? How do we, experience the growth or the operational outcomes that we're seeking to gain in a very quick manner? And then inspiring, and I call it translating. So, like, being able to translate what the goal is. So, usually from the board, it's like, we need this much EBITDA, or we need this much revenue. That doesn't necessarily inspire the revenue generating individuals in the field. So how do you then translate that number typically into the altruistic patient experience or patient care, and, creating that, like, the why are we here? Why do I wake up and come to work every day? So I think, as an chief operating officer, it's like, you have to be able to connect all those dots and then get the organization to execute in a way that delivers the results, but inspires passion and value and mission and vision at the patient experience level.
Very true. Yeah, great points.
Yeah.
So in operations, right, there's always fires. Sometimes we feel like firefighters more than operators, but with that, how do you deal with the stress that comes at you in life?
Prioritization of what needs to be handled first. It's a great question, because I'm actually, I'm looking to build my team, and I'm trying to feel that, because it's a very high demand, high growth organization. So how do you find people that love firefight, love the constant run of problem solving and continuous improvement, and don't get burnt out by it? I think you just need to always have your, kind of top 5 things that you're trying to achieve, and prioritize activities that are delivering on those. And then, it's building that foundation of people. So for me, like, right now, I'm at the beginning of the journey. It's people. It's making sure we have the right people in the right jobs, with the right attitude, with the right vision, with the right tools. And then I can then, really focus on process, and, okay, do I have the right accountabilities in place? Do I have the right data to measure the process? And then I focus on results, right? I can't just, sit here and demand results. that I think it's just staying organized in that fashion. You know, every day is something new. That's why I love operations. It's not the same. It's not making, widgets every day and doing the same process every day. It is really someone who loves the thrill of, while there's base business things that you have to focus on every day, like your metrics and your interactions with the data, there is also the people component, which is always different every day, the different firefighting. So there's a certain aspect of, you have to enjoy firefighting. You have to enjoy that thrill of, problem solving every single day for something totally new that you weren't expecting.
Absolutely. So on a more personal note, who is the chief investment officer in your household? So, from an investing financial standpoint, who really owns that, or how do you handle that in your household?
That's a great question. So I'd say originally in our relationship, my husband was really better at that. I was more of a passive investor. I just put money in the 401k and put it on cruise control, or I put, I didn't pay attention to it enough. Actually, thinking back to your question, what would I tell my younger self? It's invest. Like, be more of an investor. I did. Yes. Now you bring this up, this is actually really, like, I was very passive with that. I always, I had 401k or an IRA since I was in my 20s, but I wasn't as engaged in it as I could and should have been. I mean, I was in Seattle. I had friends in Starbucks and Amazon and everything in a very early time frame. And, they even said, oh, we're working for this new company. We're selling stock. We're going to go public. And I was like, oh, I don't have enough money. I always made excuses. But in our relationship early on, it was my husband. As I think I've also become more acutely aware of the markets and I guess taking an interest in it. I now, I'm in crypto. I took a board seat at a financial services company on their advisory board, just to get to know financial services a bit more and understand investments. And so I think those sort of those things got me excited. So, and now I'm really into the markets and understanding, the structure and where I can put my money and growing money that I could have done at a young age. So, yeah,
no, it's amazing once you understand compounding interest and what that will do through the years. And, the younger you start investing, the just earlier you're most likely be able to retire.
Correct. Yes. I mean, even and like in the whole thing of, reallocating debt, and where you're, a lot of us come out with student loan debt, and, the opportunities to change where that debt sits, and how do you move that, and how do you, I'm on these chat rooms now where it's all about like people with student loan and trying to encourage people on how to do it. And it's just amazes me that now I wasn't the only one that kind of put my federal loans on cruise control and also just didn't pay attention. I just wrote that check every month until like 7 years in. I'm like, oh, I haven't done a dent in the principal. And then I refied and I was paid off in 3 years. And I was like, oh my God, I was like nauseous, like from the amount of money I'd thrown down the toilet in, in these federal loan programs. Whereas, when you went into private refinancing, you can accelerate your debt-free status. So, so my husband's a bit more, he's always been a bit more of that squirrel, like the money away, and a bit more active on the active markets. I've always been squirreling money away in like the long-term savings plans, but wasn't as active in like the stocks and crypto and all the other ways that you can invest and save.
Good. Well, I'm glad we've got an active mind on that now. And I think you make a great point with the student loans, right? I mean, when we go and take out student loans, we really have at that point, no idea what we're doing and what that means. And like you said, sometimes people just make their payments and years go by until they really think about, okay, what, how much have I paid to the principal, and how much into this am I going to pay in interest? And is there a better way to be doing this? So
correct.
Point. Yvonne, talk a little bit about Vader down, right? So comes from the saying, sending the elevator back down, which is just another way of saying paying it forward in your career once you've reached a point where you really can help empower and elevate others in their career. And so what does sending the elevator back down mean to you?
I think it's about creating the next generation of women in leadership and continuing to expand the ranks of us in there. So for me, it's very personal. Again, I think the thing that fulfills me the most is seeing seeing female and women leaders, and men too. I don't want to exclude that, but I think in when we're talking about the diversity of the workforce and and seeing the diversity of leadership at the highest ranks in organizations is definitely a disparity. So there's no disputing the data. Again, very metric driven. The data is there and it is very factual. So to me, sending the elevator down is to do whatever I can in my ability and where I sit and my exposure and my network to help connect, to provide the guidance and the mentorship that wasn't as readily available to me, to future generations, but also then connecting networks. Because I think, again, if I had learned to network 15, 20 years ago, as I have in the last 5 to 7 years, there may be a huge, it could have been a much faster ramp. But now I think I have the opportunity to descend that experience and help other women ramp faster.
In leadership, what is one thing that is true that maybe society might tell you something different?
So I'll reflect to something. I think in true leadership, I think you have different types of leaders. Some people, there's the leaders that lead through authority. I think in true leaders that there's formal and informal leaders, and the informal leaders have as much, if not more, influence in organizations and stuff than some of your formal leaders. So tapping those informal leaders, and by meaning informal, like they don't necessarily have a have a defined leadership role. They're influencers more than direct accountability to humans. So that we need to focus on those influencers, and not social media influencers, but like the informal leaders, and so that's one piece. I think on the other piece is it's okay. People will follow you if they know that you care, and to be a caring leader, I think is sometimes like society's like, oh, like leadership doesn't care. Well, the good leaders, they do. They really do care about their people. And you see the acceleration of the organization when at the very highest levels of the organization, they demonstrate that they care. It's not about how much you know, it's how much you care. So I think society might tell you like, oh, leaders are, they're all they care about is money and all they care about is that. Well, no, we're accountable to those sort of things, but we're really like leaders care about our humans, and we care about our process of how we care for those individuals in our organizations.
When we look at the healthcare industry, in your opinion, what are we currently underestimating in the short term and overestimating in the long term?
We're estimating the power of community-based care and shifting healthcare into the community. There's a lot of focus on it, the execution and the integration, and creating that lateral integration of care across those care continuums is really still where a lot of this broken. Now you're seeing it through consolidation. You're seeing all the payers picking up things. I think we are overestimating the power of the payers and underestimating the value of the consumer. So I think the consumers are really driven by the payers right now. If you think about where we make decisions on how we acquire healthcare, it's generally about where we're in network. And I really think if we want to transform healthcare, we put that power of decision making back into the consumer's hands, which is the patient. So,
oh, great point. So in conclusion today, Katie, what do you want the viewers to hear as just really the key takeaway from our interview?
My key take is you can achieve what you want to achieve, but you need to know what you want to achieve. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand where you want to go and where do you want that balance. Maybe you don't want to run 60-hour weeks and do all that, and that's okay. It's completely okay to say that. But really taking the time figure out what it is you want and putting it down on paper, putting down your values, putting down your vision, and then working towards that or backing into it. You may have to say, I'm overextending. It's not really what I want. I need to back into a place that aligns to my values and my vision. I'm Katie Ingram with Vader Down, and I'm sending the elevator back down.